Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight, I have amazing information for you. Our guest tonight is Richard Kellner, the founder of Polycystic Kidney Disease Outreach Foundation. Richard is here to discuss preimplantation genetic testing, better known as capital PGT-M, and in vitro fertilization, capital IVF, so parents don't pass PKD to future generations. And we're looking at this as a possible way to end PKD. So this is an important broadcast. Be sure you share it around. And also, just so you know, in my Facebook, on my Facebook page, the broadcast is pinned to the top of the page. In the comments is all kinds of information about Richard, the group, the Polycystic Kidney Disease Outreach Group, the scientific information about all the things we're going to discuss tonight. So be sure you check that out if you want to drill down a little bit on that information. Okay, back to the introduction. Richard was married to Joe Kellner in 1990, and they had two beautiful children. His wife, Joe, was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease as a teenager. When they visited the doctor at that time, they were told, quote, nothing to do but wait until her kidneys failed, unquote. Joe's kidneys eventually failed, and in 2014, Richard was found to be a match and donated a kidney to her. This was a preemptive kidney transplant. It was discovered that Joe had passed her PKD along to both her children, and some of her family members had also been diagnosed with PKD. Richard and his family learned that there are ways to slow the progression of PKD and to prevent it from being passed down to future generations. His children follow a protocol of medication, diet, and lifestyle changes to help slow the progression of the disease. Unfortunately, Joe passed away in 2021. It became a passion of Richard's to help others, to allow Joe's legacy of warmth, strength, and generosity to live on. Quote, we knew we had to do something to help other families who are suffering from PKD, unquote. It then became Richard's goal, Richard's obsession really, to give others access to information and solutions to fight this disease. He created the PKD Outreach Foundation. You'll find that at www.k-D-O.org to spread awareness and education, quote, especially to the parents of 20 and 30-year-olds to know that there are options for their children. I want them to know there are ways to manage the disease, and especially that there is a way to eliminate it in the next generation. We don't want children to be born with this disease, unquote. To find PKD and possibly eliminate it, the PKD Outreach Foundation recommends supporting live kidney donations to shorten the wait times for a kidney, to slow the progression of the disease, and most importantly, in your family, by preimplantation genetic testing, that's the PGT-M that I mentioned earlier, and in vitro fertilization. So parents don't pass PKD to their future generations. This will be the focus of our discussion this evening. The pkDO is dedicated to the end of the threat of PKD to affected families, and that under certain circumstances, they will help with the funding of the cost of the PGT-M testing. Please give a warm welcome to our friend, Richard Kellner. Rich, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Jim. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm glad you're here. This is interesting. Did I state everything correctly in the introduction?
Beautifully. Thank you very much.
Okay, our friends Elizabeth Odom and Anthony Reed are saying hello. You got fans already, my friend.
Listen, this is a challenge for the whole community and an opportunity. And we're at the early stages of it, right? So there is the possibility for a PKD-free world. It won't happen in my lifetime, but you know, if I get enough time, you know, maybe there won't be any more PKD babies born with PKD, right? By the time I go, and that's what we're starting with.
Okay. Richard, tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your education, and your work experience.
Yeah. So I grew up in New York, and you know, have a college degree and had a career in international finance and then in insurance. I have a risk management business. What's interesting, it's been 15 years of as a CFO, COO. Then I have a company now called Next Chapter, which has been my second career in risk management, and I'm really looking at pkDO as the final chapter, right? The third leg, and to basically take the skills and knowledge and everything that I learned in the first two, and actually put it to, you know, instead of the for profit, now for good.
Okay. It's my understanding that at one point in time you were married to a woman named Jo. Is that a correct understanding?
Yeah, Joanne and I were married for 30 years.
And when were you married?
We were married in 1990. I was 23 years old.
All right. And she's the mother of your two children?
Yes.
It's my understanding they also have ADPKD. Is that correct?
That's correct. You know, they're in their late. They're both in their late 20s. Very healthy, great. You know, doing well, and you know, fortunately, because of the things that we've learned, they're doing some things. Both with diet therapeutics. There's a medical food called Keto Citra that we're big supporters of. That are all designed to help slow the progression of PKD. So it's certainly not a cure, but you know, maybe with these modest changes in lifestyle and diet, instead of their kidneys failing in, you know, at around 50, like their grandmother, their mother, and their aunt, you know, they could potentially get an extra 15 to 20 years out of their native kidneys, right? So postpone the need for a transplant until they're 65 or 70. And, you know, that would be pretty life-changing.
I also understand that Jo was diagnosed with polycystic kidney disease. Approximately when did that occur?
So that was before I knew her. It's, you know, her mother had already had a failed kidney transplant, was on dialysis. So I met Jo when I was 20, and she had already been diagnosed. So you know, I knew about Jo's PKD. You know, long, you know, probably within the first month after we got to know each other.
Okay. Do you know the circumstances that led to her seeking a diagnosis? How did that come about?
You know what? I don't recall.
Okay. I understand that after Jo was diagnosed and you went to visit with her physician with her, you were told, quote, there was nothing to do but wait until her kidneys failed, unquote. What was your reaction to that?
Yeah, you know, my reaction to that was, okay, this is the deal. You know, I learned about, again, I'm 23 years old. I knew, you know, at 23 years old, getting married, I knew one day I would donate a kidney. And I think I had a little bit of the naive view of, you know, at some point her kidneys will fail. I'll donate a kidney. And, you know, we'll go. It'll be happily ever after. And listen, the kidney transplant was a blessing. And we didn't get as good a shake out of it as we would have liked. But it's a kidney transplant and living with the the anti-rejection meds and everything else and the immune suppression, is not a nothing.
Okay.
And the reality is the immune suppression is the reason why Joanne's mother passed at 68 and why Joanne passed at 56.
Okay, I understand that in 2014 you donated a kidney to Joe. Please tell us, how did you learn that you were a match for Josephine?
It was so one, I always kind of envisioned I wouldn't be a match and that we would just do a swap, right? So, once Joe's creatinine got to a certain level, it was time to get tested. And I knew I was going to donate. Unfortunately, at the time, I was 50 pounds overweight and hypertensive and with pre-diabetic. I knew I was overweight. I didn't realize that I had a blood pressure issue, and I didn't realize I was pre-diabetic. And so I remember the doctors coming in and telling me, "Hey, good news, bad news. Good news is you're a match. Bad news is they're not going to take your kidney." So I lost 50 pounds in 90 days.
Wow.
Yeah. Got a great dietitian, great trainer, and it became job number one.
Okay. What transplant center was this?
New York Presbyterian, Columbia.
Okay. And again, so people understand, preemptive kidney transplant, that's transplant before starting dialysis. So Joe didn't spend one day on dialysis. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we were supposed to have participate in I was a good match, but not a perfect match. And we were supposed to participate in a 3-couple paired exchange. Unfortunately, Joe's pre-surgical testing, she had a spot on her lungs, and they had to cancel the whole thing. Turned out to be nothing. 6 weeks later, there was nothing on the X-ray, but they had to reschedule another swap. And then, it took time to get another swap scheduled. And then at that point, Joe's creatinine and kidney function had slipped enough. So they called me up and they said, "Look, there's one extra procedure that we need to do on Joe, but we could do this direct. And that's a better choice than her going on dialysis until we could arrange a swap." So that's the way it went down.
Okay. Do you remember the approximate date in 2014 when you donated to Joe?
February 6th.
Wow. I'll give you credit. You had a kind of a bumpy road to transplant.
We did. We definitely did.
Between 2014 and 2021, your children as well as other members of the family were diagnosed with PKD, and you've mentioned that there was protocol that your children followed to try and slow the progress of the disease in terms of medication, diet, and lifestyle. Can you explain to us what types of medication, diet, and lifestyle that your children are utilizing to try and slow down the progression?
Yeah, so from a lifestyle perspective, it's obviously staying fit, being smart about eating. But there are some specific things with PKD, some things certain foods such as oxalates that are in almonds and spinach and otherwise healthy foods that are known to accelerate the growth of the cysts, right? So they're on a diet where they kind of stay away from those things, and they've worked with a dietitian to kind of get guidance in terms of the types of things that they need to stay away from. They're on a drug called Genarq, right, which is another FDA approved drug, and a drug that the PKD Foundation completely supports. And again, it's designed to slow the kidney, the cyst growth. So they're on that, and then they also take a medical food supplement called Keto which all the doctors have looked at and said, yeah, this is all natural stuff. It's not dangerous, and certainly not dangerous to the kidney, and it's very promising in terms of the potential for slowing the progression of the cyst growth.
Okay, and when you talk about Genarq, that is the same medication that's also called tolvaptan. Is that correct?
Same medication.
Have your children taken any steps to prevent the passage of PKD to the next generation?
My grandchildren will not have this disease. Neither of them are ready to have children, but they are both aware of preimplantation genetic testing. And it's funny, when I first told them about this, it was probably a couple of months after their mother passed, where I put this in front of them, and I said, guys, hey, listen, with in vitro, rather than but with in vitro and with this preimplantation genetic testing, we could be done with this. Their original reaction is like, Dad, I don't really want to hear about this from you. Like, ugh. And then 3 weeks later, a couple of weeks later, they both came back to us and said, Dad, how could we not? Listen, in vitro is not a nothing, right? It takes a bit of a commitment. It's physically demanding on the women, little bit emotional, challenging, but we continue to work with family after family after family. And once they understand what's involved with in vitro, and already having a family history and understanding the pain that goes into, this disease, they're sitting there and going like, how can I not?
Okay. And I noticed that this is the same protocol that you recommend on your website, www.pkdo.org. Is that correct?
That's correct. And if you go to pkdo.org/babies, it specifically gets to the part of our website where we provide some high level guidance on how this procedure works. And I'm happy to talk people through that if you'd like.
Okay. Our friend Nancy Hughes is asking a question. Is PGT-M expensive? What can I do if healthcare won't cover it? Can you talk a little bit about what your foundation does about costs?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, in vitro plus the preimplantation testing probably costs, $25,000 to $30,000. In many cases, insurance will cover both the in vitro and the preimplantation genetic testing, but in many cases it doesn't, right? So and certain states are more progressive than others in terms of mandating it. So the first thing to do is to look into whether your insurance will cover the IVF and the PGT. And if insurance doesn't cover it and you have a need and you can't afford it, we have different programs. One that's already in place, right? The 100 PKD-Free Babies Initiative that will cover the cost up to $3,000 for the PGT testing of the embryos. And we're working with other another program that hopefully will be coming soon to help subsidize the cost of the IVF. And we're working with a couple of really special IVF center partners where they're going to discount the services to people that are participating in our programs. We're going to kick in some money and potentially get this get this solution in the reach of most people financially.
Okay. I understand, unfortunately, that Joe passed away in 2021. What was the exact date of her passing?
January 21.
Okay. And
I'm sorry. It was February 8th. That's 21's her birth. January 21's her birthday. It was February 8th. So.
Okay. Well, you're one of the husbands that don't forget your wife's birthday. That's pretty cool.
We launched pkDO on her birthday, so that's our new anniversary.
Okay. What caused her to pass? I mean, I know she had polycystic kidney disease, but my experience with it is there are usually complications, comorbidities that work their way in. Did Joe have any experience with that?
So the immune suppression and the enlarged kidneys were comorbidities but she had pancreatitis. So gallstones that cause pancreatitis, and the immune suppression and enlarged kidneys gave her really little chance of beating the pancreatitis.
Okay. I understand that at least part of the reason why you started the PKD Outreach Foundation as a not-for-profit was to honor your wife, because Joe was such a warm, strong, and generous person, and you were trying to help other families who are suffering from PKD. Just to make sure we have the date straight, when was the foundation created?
It was launched January 21, 2022.
Okay. And can you discuss the foundation's mission with us a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, real simple. We're looking to put an end to this disease. So the big goal, right? I've got a 100 PKD-free babies initiative that we're doing now, where we've got funding for 100 PKD-free babies. But ultimately, the goal of the foundation is no more babies with PKD, right? We want to make sure that the medical community, right? So we're going to start with patient activism, but with getting the patients to ask their doctors about this. But ultimately, we want to get to the point where the OBGYNs and the nephrologists are telling their patients, you need to look into this. You've got PKD, right? If you're thinking about a family, right, please talk to a genetic counselor or fertility center. Your children don't have to have this disease. And then obviously we want to make sure that the funding is available so that that people that find out about this then go, well, that's great that this exists, but I can't afford $30,000. So it's a two-tiered approach, right? We got to make sure that the awareness is there so that people are asking for it. And then we got to make sure that the funding is there to make sure that they do it. And this is good money for the insurance companies, right? I mean, Jim, you know what the medical expenses are associated with kidney failure, right? With dialysis and transplants and medications. It is $1 million plus expense that could be eliminated with a $30,000 expenditure, right?
Okay.
With a lot of certainty, right?
Well, believe me, I understand the expenses, Richard, because either I or some form of insurance has been paying for them over the years. And when I used to see those $100,000 bills from my dialysis I was on dialysis for 4 years, for a month's worth of dialysis, they used to have to help me up off the floor. So I do understand the expenses. I saw on your website, and you mentioned this with your children, that there are 4 methods the foundation uses and promotes to create awareness and let parents know there are ways to help their children, to stop the spread of the disease, and to slow the progress. So I'd like to discuss each of those individually with you. Let's talk about the first one, supporting live kidney donations. Why is that important?
Well, listen, you know what? Again, when we started the foundation, the ultimate goal is to end the disease, but this is a multi-generational challenge, right? You've got my contemporaries, your contemporaries, right? We're dealing with kidney failure, right? We've got an immediate need, right? We've got loved ones, that are on dialysis and are waiting 7+ years for a kidney, and many wasting away and potentially passing before that deceased donor comes, and for that matter, a live kidney donation is a better outcome. And I am a believer that there's more to there are plenty of foundations that are working on trying to increase the amount of deceased donor kidneys, and cut the list that way. And there's been a lot of effort and a lot of work on it, and it doesn't seem to be putting a dent in the list. I am a believer that we're all born with an extra kidney. And that there are many people that want to help other people. And it's not for everyone, but there are plenty of people out there when they're made aware of the opportunity to save a life, change a life, and really understand the medical procedure and the risk associated with donating a kidney, that they will altruistically donate. There's an organization I work with in New York called Renewal. They work in a very small community in New York, the Orthodox Jewish community, and pre-COVID, they were responsible for almost 200 in their small community, responsible for almost 200 altruistic donors per year. So, if you're in that community in New York, you're not waiting for a deceased donor. Renewal's typically finding you one. And their methods are, and again, I've gotten to know the founder really well. It's not about religion, it's about community. And the methods can be spread to other communities if they embrace it. So we have 2 pilot programs that are very, very below the radar, but we're working in 2 different communities to bring those same methods into those communities. We don't really talk about where it is and what it is and stuff like that, because the resources are limited and we're only able to help a handful of people right now. But we in 2023 we've had more than a handful of successful transplants, and those programs are thriving, and then they'll grow, and then again it'll spread. But that's a long-term project. But again, we were able to get medical centers in other communities to embrace the methods, try it, and those initiatives kind of have a life of their own now, and we just provide. We kind of seeded it, got the idea off the ground, and now provide some funding for it. But we're optimistic in the next several years that's going to become more and more available. And that's not just for people with PKD. That's for anybody in need of a kidney.
Okay. As I understand it, this method, there's a better quality of life and a longer transplant life. As you mentioned, you're partnering with other centers. There's more of an emphasis on paired exchange, the swap you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
You're decreasing the wait time by 50%. You're trying to increase living kidney donations from 200 a year to 200,000
Well, to
a
20,
year.
Yeah. I mean, you know, look, our goal is, right, if Renewal is able to do this, you know, able to get 200 transplants done a year in their community, right? If we could replicate that in 100 different communities, right? Replicate that success in 100 different communities, that's 20,000 transplants a year, 20,000 additional transplants a year against a wait list of 107,000. That wait list for everyone's going to get a lot shorter. Right. But again, that is a huge undertaking, right? But again, Renewal's been successful in doing it. The methods work. And you know, so we'd love to see that replicated in another 100 communities around the country.
Okay. Please talk to us about slowing the progression of the disease, medication, lifestyle changes, diet, that type of thing. Can you tell us the kind of things that you're recommending or that you're actually doing on your website?
Yeah. So again, this is really just an awareness campaign for us. And we're supporting others such as Santa Barbara Nutrients that make Keto who are really doing a lot to create awareness of these these solutions. You know, so again, so it's diet. You know, the things that I discussed with my kids. Those, just to be clear, we did our research. We came up with this. My kids didn't know about this until we formed pkDO. We formed our committee. We learned these things, and then we put it out on site. You know, what I will tell you is, and I think the leading place for this, the PKD Foundation, all right, one of the great initiatives that they've done is they've started a Center of Excellence initiative, and they now have almost 50 centers around the country where you have a PKD Center of Excellence, because one of the problems is the care, the PKD care. A general nephrologist doesn't really specialize or know a lot about early stage PKD and how to treat it, right? They treat CKD, right? You got, you know, well, every nephrologist is trained to treat a patient, you know, with PKD. Once their GFR drops low enough, they know what to do. They're not necessarily trained, right, how to take a young patient who's perfectly healthy. And these are the things that you could do to slow the progression of the disease. I mean, we had a great nephrologist, and you know, with tolvaptan or Janarq, whatever, the doctor mentioned it to us, said, "Yeah, this is out there. It seems promising." And I'm like, "Well, can you tell me more?" He's like, "Well, you should Google it." I'm looking for a little better from the doctors, and I think, you know, at the PKD Centers of Excellence, you know, that they are better prepared to deal with those questions and stuff like that. But again, the 20 and the 30-year-olds that are otherwise healthy are not even, you know, typically are not going to nephrologists. So to all of my contemporaries out there that have kids in their teens, in their 20s, and their 30s, you know, we have a link on our site that will direct you to the PKD Foundation Center of Excellence. You can find the one nearest you. We can refer you to dietitians. Again, but it's really just a matter of talking to the right doctors about diet, tolvaptan. And again, I encourage you to go to Santa Barbara Nutrients and learn more about keto citrates. It's another product we really believe in.
Okay. Just to recap, when we're talking about diet, we're urging our patients to stay hydrated, stay on a low protein, low salt diet. We're limiting sugar and oxalates. We're following a ketogenic diet, plant-based diet, the medical food, keto citra. Lifestyle, we're talking about hydration, exercises, and the right pain medication, which I'm assuming is Tylenol. The other kinds of medication are not the kind of medication recommended for PKD patients. And of course, you've mentioned the approved medication to slow down the development of cysts and the spread of bad tissue on your kidneys, tolvaptan or Jarnique. Am I stating those things correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. Just one point I'll make about the diet, Jim. You don't necessarily have to do all of the things, right? The more of them that you do, right, the cumulative effect is greater, but not everything is going to fit everyone's lifestyles. But if you start taking, if you do half the things, right? So, a keto diet is definitely great, but a keto diet's not for everyone, right? So, and if you're doing a keto diet, you don't need the keto citra, right? The keto citra kind of emulates the body. It kind of creates some of the same effect in the body as a keto diet, right? That's what my kids are doing because the keto diet was just too restrictive for them. But they are they're good about their hydration. They're taking their GnRQ, and they're staying away from oxalates.
Okay. Let's talk about the big ticket item for the night. Let's talk about ending PKD in your family. It's my understanding that the goal is to reduce the risk of PKD from being passed down to future generations. And we're talking about AD PKD now from 50% to 0%. The recessive gene, we're talking about reducing from 25% to 0%. Can you take us through step by step and explain? And this is an older theory, by the way, right? This is not something medically new. Can you take us through step by step and explain how this works?
Yeah, and Jim, that was a great point. Let me just hit around this. This is not new. This has been around for 25 years. And if you go to a fertility clinic for fertility reasons, they're going to tell you about this, right? And they're going to say, they take a family history and they're going to say, hey, by the way, we could test your embryos for these genetic conditions that are in your family history and not implant the embryos that have this. This has been around for 25 years. And, the biggest thing that it's being used for preemptively now is the BRCA gene, right? So if you go to an OBGYN, you're doing family planning and the OBGYN knows you're thinking about having kids. They do a family history and he's going to tell you, oh, you've got the BRCA gene. You should look into this to make sure you don't pass it down to your children. During the same family history, they'll find out about your PKD. They'll ask about it. Maybe you haven't been tested, you haven't, but if you know it's in the family, right? And for some reason, the vast majority of OBGYNs, the bell doesn't go off to think about this tested, time-tested, proven, well-understood science. They're not connecting the dots. But if you do go for it, the first step is actually a pretty non-invasive procedure where they basically go to the parents and potentially some of the other family members that have the PKD, and they take either blood or a saliva sample, they test the DNA, and they try to identify the one of 4 genes that cause PKD. And, you know, when it's in the family, multi-generational, right? You know, you've got, you know, more than one person in the family with it. They are very typically able to identify that gene and create what's called a probe, right? You know, which is basically the probe is basically the benchmark that they'll test the embryos against. If you're a de novo case, it's not impossible to come up with an effective probe, but it is harder. So once you go through that step and you have a probe, they could tell you, no, we've got a really good probe. Like this probe, when we go to test the embryos, we'll be able to find that gene. And again, typically, if it's multi-generational, you know, more than one person, that the probes are usually reliable. And you wouldn't start and you don't start the IVF until you've got a good probe that you know is going to be effective, right? So modest cost, right? Not invasive. Either we can or we can't be effective with this. Assuming that you have a good probe, you know, the next step is you start the in vitro process, right? They harvest, they work with the women, they go through the harvesting of the eggs process. Then they fertilize the eggs and they let the embryos mature a bit. And then what they do is they do the PGTM testing. They take a little sample of the DNA from each of the embryos, match it against the probe to determine which of those embryos have the PKD. And by the way, at the same time they're doing this, they can test for other diseases, right? We're only doing it for PKD. But if there are other serious diseases in the family, that's what they're doing. They're not testing for boy, girl. They're not testing for eye color. It is just genetic diseases. That's what they're, you know, serious genetic diseases. And then, you know, you've got 12 embryos. 6 of them have PKD. 6 of them don't. Well, when they go to pick the 1 or 2 embryos that they're going to implant, they're obviously going to pick from the 6 that don't have PKD. And by the way, you know, again, if they get 6 embryos that don't have PKD, they'll implant 1 or 2. Hopefully that creates a pregnancy and a child. If it doesn't take the first time, you've got more embryos. And by the way, you know, hopefully, you know, again, if it's a young family that wants more than one child, you know, the embryos that don't have PKD and even the other ones are potentially frozen and available for a second or third pregnancy. So you don't have to go through the harvesting cycle twice if you have enough PKD-free embryos.
Okay. And so our audience understands the PGT-M test, that is specifically designed for genetic conditions like PKD, to try to find that genetic mutation before the pregnancy occurs. Do I have that correct?
That is correct. This is all before the pregnancy it happens. 100%. We are not testing for anything after the pregnancy. They're implanting embryos that are PKD free.
Okay. What is the percentage of chance after a parent goes through all the genetic mutation testing and the biopsy and the probe and the in vitro fertilization of the woman giving birth to someone that has PKD? Is it an absolute zero opportunity or is it something else?
nothing in life is an absolute zero, but my understanding is that if there's a good probe, the possibility of that an embryo that's tested against that probe having PKD is well below 1%, and would be that rare occasion where it was actually a new mutation, right? Because again, PKD is both passed down, but there are de novo cases, right? It is a mutation that does occur, and we've dealt with several families where neither parent had it, right? So the
And it does spontaneously come up.
Yep. And so that's what I'm saying. And that is also rare, but I suppose even if you're doing right, you could not implant the embryos that have the family marker, but you could have a spontaneous de novo case in that embryo. But again, the probabilities of that are tens or hundreds of a percent.
Okay. And the cost for all this testing, what would you estimate the cost to be?
The PGT testing typically runs about a few $100s per embryo, and we're working on getting some discounts from the testing facilities. There's also some cost to the probe, but the genetic testing in general, in terms of both the probe and the embryo testing, probably adds about $5,000 to the cost of the in vitro.
Okay, and I understand that your foundation has an initiative going about 100 PKD-free babies. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yep. So for any families where insurance will not cover the genetic testing, the PGTM, we'll fund up to $3,000 for the testing of the embryos.
And the link for that is, of course, on your website, correct?
That's correct. It's pkDO.org/babies, right? What's right there.
What we're looking at on the screen. Okay. All right. Now, during the broadcast, you mentioned there were some future initiatives. What I want to talk to you about is the ones that we can discuss, because I know there's always things in the works, and you don't want to spill the beans too soon and that sort of thing. But the things that we can talk about, tell us, what kinds of future initiatives does the pkDO have coming up in the near future that people might be able to take advantage of someday?
Yeah. So we want to be able to help more families, right? So having the funding for the genetic testing has definitely helped a few families, right? But there are other families out there that are now aware of this. They want to have PKD-free children. Their insurance doesn't cost the IVF. It doesn't cover the IVF. It doesn't cover the genetic testing. And they're looking at a $30,000 cost, which is just insurmountable, right? And we've helped a few that have, families going into debt in order to have PKD-free children, and some people can't even borrow the $30,000. So we are trying to find a way where we raise money for a grant to cover a portion of the IVF. That grant is then matched by partner in vitro clinics, right? So again, our goal is we come up with $10,000 for the IVF and PGT instead of just the $3,000. Have partner IVF centers that will discount $10,000, and And then the cost to the families goes from 30,000 to 10,000, which becomes much more in reach, right? Now all of a sudden, you're doing a GoFundMe in your community, and maybe you raise 5,000, right? So, you're not even going to try to do it for 30,000, but if it's 10,000 and you could raise 5,000 through a GoFundMe through your friends, and now all of a sudden it's putting 5,000 on the credit card to have a PKD-free child. That becomes a lot more accessible to a lot more people than 30 grand, where you just walk away.
Okay. This method of having PKD-free babies, this sounds to me like this could possibly lead to the end of polycystic kidney disease as we know it.
That's the dream.
Can you explain why this has been around a long time? Why has this not been more emphasized? Why don't people seem to know about this? What's happened?
Yeah, you know what, Jim? The medical system is strained. Doctors are strained. They work really, really hard seeing patients, and unless it's on their checklist, unless the medical community is turning around and saying, hey, these are the things you check for, not every doctor has an opportunity to think about it. And by the way, I've spoken to medical students, who've graduated medical school in the last 4 or 5 years, and they're currently still not teaching medical students about this. They're teaching them about PKD, and again, they're still teaching them, there's nothing you can do about it till kidney failure. So yeah, it's just, and listen, they can't teach everything. It's a little bit stale, and so yeah, the training is a little bit stale. We're not on the checklist for the OBGYNs. This stuff is outside of the typical training of the nephrologist. They haven't been made aware of it. So it's fixable, right? But we got to start, right? So if we could build a community that starts having a loud enough voice, hopefully the medical community starts hearing it and the word starts getting out. Doctors start telling people about it, and then we could focus on the funding issues.
Okay. So I just want to remind all those PKD patients out there, all those potential PKD parents, sometimes you have to be your own best advocate. And
For sure.
when you're in seeing your doctor, your GP or your nephrologist, and if you want to have children, you may be the one that has to bring this up.
Yeah.
You may be the one that may have to call this to their attention. You may be the one that has to insist that you be given the opportunity to go through this process because of what Richard just said. So, yeah. Okay, Uncle Jim, that's enough editorializing from you.
Jim, that's a great point, because that's really, we were about patient activism, right? So we're not suggesting that anybody just look at our website and go do this stuff, but take these ideas to your doctors and talk to them. And by the way, if your doctors respond to you and don't think that this stuff is real, right? Come to us and we'll help you find doctors that know about this. Because again, this is all science and not new science. It's been around, but just unfortunately, not every doctor knows about it.
What did you say? 25, 29 years, something like that?
Yeah, about my understanding is the PGTM has been pretty established science for over 25 years.
Okay. Richard, do you have any final statements that you wish to make to our audience this evening before we conclude the broadcast?
No. Well, Jim, I want to thank you for helping us get the word out, right? So we're at the beginning, right, of solving a problem. And people like you getting involved, your members of your community getting involved. This is how we're going to solve the problem. Right now, it's just me and two other people, doing what we can to get the word out, to raise the money and stuff like that. And we're getting some pretty good traction. We've helped a lot of families already. But if we've got people getting involved and talking to their doctors and bringing these ideas to their doctors and poking the curiosity, that's gonna create the momentum that will allow this again. Get the medical community kind of listening and on board.
Okay. Richard, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and helping to raise awareness tonight and educate us about the pkDO Foundation and the things that you guys do, and especially about the genetic testing, the biopsy, embryo biopsy, and the in vitro fertilization that could lead to a very low number of infants getting polycystic kidney disease, either the dominant version or the recessive version,
Right.
which, as you know, is more damaging under some circumstances to young children. So I thank you very much for coming on. I have a little bit to wind up with the audience, so I'm going to let you go. I know you're a busy guy and it's a Friday night. But I just want to say thank you. Wow, what a terrific broadcast. Just great information. And I'm so fired up for your cause. It's just an amazing thing. I'm glad that you guys are out there and you're making this known. Thank you for coming on and educating all of us this evening.
Great. Thank you again for the opportunity, Jim. Thank you.
No worries. No worries, my friend.
We'll be in touch.
All right. Rich, you can go. Don't worry.
Thank you.
I know it's Friday night. Not everybody's crazy like me. Any rate, we have Mr. Gunther on next week. He's an advocate for the DPC Foundation. He's going to tell us a little bit about his story and about his advocacy work. You don't want to miss this. This is an extremely experienced advocate. So, fire up, and I'll see you guys next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. And thank you so much again for coming in and being with us and helping us to raise awareness for PKD, which is near and dear to my heart since I've lost, so many members of my family to polycystic kidney disease. So thank you for watching. Please spread the words. Hello to my friends Donna and Elizabeth that didn't get a chance to say hi during the broadcast. I want to do it now. And I'll see you guys next week. Thank you for watching.